when you took up the task of translating into English, you originally were in favour of doing paraphrases, and I explained that really what I really wanted was what was necessary, really, was line for line. You've become very famous for doing singing translations. Indeed, for operas, English translations, song, all sorts of things. And there's no one better in the world at it than you. What is the difference between really, I mean, did you find it a tougher task? Would you have preferred to do a singing translation of the songs?
Sometimes I've even attempted that, but actually that's so hard. And these songs are inextricable. It's funny, with a Schubert song, maybe you could take the tune and maybe put another dum-de-dum verse on top of it, and it would be an early Schubert song, let's say. These ones, they're intertwined so totally. I think eventually what I tried to do was to write a text which resembled what Poulenc would have seen on the page. As simple as that. Obviously, as a French person, he would have understood exactly what it meant. But I think it's really important that a text is not a symptom of a song, it's the cause of a song. So trying to get something that was just simple and runic, and occasionally with a splash of spin on it, a bit of colour, a bit of a joke, a bit of a feeling that you get off the French, which occasionally by maybe choosing a word here and there gives me a feeling of, this is a silly poem, this is a fun poem, this is a profound poem. And those things come out in English quite differently. Profundity, for example, I think works better in simple words in English, and in French very often with more complicated words. So it was very much a labour of love. It really was, and I think I wouldn't have been able to do it in the way I've done it if I hadn't known these songs. The first thing you said,
yes, true,
because it's impossible to unknow this music. Once I know these words, there are certain phrases that they just go together. Not just the titles like Tu vois le feu du soir, but Nous avons fait la nuit. They have musical shapes and they have contours.
And you try to reflect those.
Yeah, exactly. But it was interesting. How do you make it fancy? Do you make it plain? But there's a massive thing here. And I think, like Schubert, years ago, Alfred Brendel did it on discs. He was asked what books he would take, and he wanted to complete Schubert songs, not for the music, he said, but for the poetry. And interestingly, this book is as an anthology of mostly French verse of the last century, is amazing. Forget Poulenc. This is a really choice, and what's great is the person who's picked it is Poulenc. He knew all verse, he knew all these poets, he knew them personally, they were his friends. He could have chosen anything, but he's made a choice of contemporary French poetry and the odd bit of Spanish and the odd bit of old stuff. Yeah. But basically it's modern poetry, and he's taking us through his collection and sometimes showing us this poem. And there's something generous about that.
You mentioned the names, and here are the editions that he used, ranging from Makoko Kangaroo, who is an entirely spurious poem from his Rhapsody Negre, Max Jacob, Jean Moreas, Cocteau, Éluard, more Cocteau, this wonderful anthology called Voir, which is devoted to the painters and Paul Éluard's friendship with Picasso and all the other painters. He was a serious collector of poetry. As you say, I mean, I'm interested in what you say about Brendel, because I also believe that in having all of Schubert's poems here, I've got a fantastic collection of 19th century poetry with musical connections, but never mind the musical connections. In its own right, it's fantastic.
And more than that, chosen by Schubert.
Yes.
Schubert is your anthologist there.
Yeah.
And that's really, and I feel the same thing, just the same thing about Britain. Just the same thing. We talk about connections between Britain and Poulenc. Britain also has a deep knowledge of poetry for a couple of centuries, all sorts of stuff, and chooses his bits and shows us what he's chosen. And I think there's something
So the poet or the poem as the reflector of the composer's taste, personality, sensibility, sympathy. It's like reading a composer through the poems he chooses.
Yes, but most importantly, I think in music, symphonies and operas are like big movies or big novels. Songs are diary entries. Then sometimes not even meant for other people to read. I mean, of course, Poulenc published everything because it was a business. He was Poulenc Inc. The NC stands for ink at the end. But Poulenc. But he needed to. These are diary entries. They're personal things, and this poem has moved him in a happy hour, or he's moved by something and is looking for the poem to reflect that. That's the bit of mystery we'll never quite know with some songwriters. Yeah. Which came first, the pool or the ink?
I'm worried about light. Could you turn the top light on? Otherwise it's going to get very dark. It's better. Does it make a different picture? Do you think it'll make any difference?
I think it's fine. If you want to have it, I'll put it on.
Are we still going?
We're still going.
Okay. One of the things that I've been, people have said, is that I've used the word marvelous or masterpiece or perfect too much. The thing is that I do believe that whereas it is quite difficult to append a word like masterpiece to a big symphony or a big sonata, one's got to be very careful about a symphony or sonata because it stays so long that to judge it a masterpiece, like for example you would one of the great Beethoven piano sonatas, well, it's really got to be quite extraordinary. But the wonderful thing about song composers is they move in and out of the medium quickly and deftly and perfectly. It's a bit like somebody doing a sketch, Matisse, or a miniature. And even if it's a miniature by Jean Clouet or Nicolas Hilliard, it still has the right to be considered a masterpiece, even more so because of its economy. And I do think that there are, in Poulenc songs, quite a high proportion of masterpieces. And I'm unashamed of saying so, because what should I... Very good, quite good, reasonably good. In a sort of a sense, the flash of emotion that comes after a performance of so many Poulenc songs is that the feeling that not a note could be different. There are these moments where we don't want a single note to change. Nous avons fait la nuit. Even the early La Carpe. The whole of Bestiaire is amazing because we don't want to change one note. It's perfection as it is.
And the reason it's perfection, and I'm very glad you use the word perfect, because I think it's a special word. What it means for me is, what I have attempted to do, I've succeeded in doing. And that thing could be tiny, or it could be a great C major by Schubert. Yeah. But you're right. In La Carpe, which is the last song of La Bestiaire, it's maybe 8 bars long, 8 measures long. He's tried to do something very unambitious, but he's succeeded 100%. And what more can you say of a work of art? That it has tried to do this and succeeded 100%, and that's perfection. There are Poulenc songs where he attempts to do things and falls on his big fat bottom. There really are. And these are not perfect. There are things that are ambitious for him, where he gets it wrong, he's trying to please someone, he's trying to be the sort of composer he feels he has to be. That's interesting. When we're talking about the 30s and the 40s songs, I think the focus of being the composer he wants to be is really interesting and really good. Later on you see him, I should be writing something atonal, so I'll write a poem. I should be writing something massive, and so he writes a rangy song. He's self-aware, and he's very often embarrassed about the music he writes being so pleasing and tonal. The Carmelites, he famously says, I apologize for my nuns, they can only sing tonal music, poor loves. That's all they can do.